Picking the wrong one of these three could double what you pay per coding task for basically the same result. Claude Opus 5, GPT 5.6, Terra, and Kimi K3 all shipped within about 2 weeks of each other, and they all claim to be great at coding. I ran all three through 5 real decision tests: cost, coding benchmarks, speed, context limits, and deployment, and kept score the whole way through. One of them wins the hard benchmarks. Another one is half the price and more than twice as fast. Test 1, cost per task. And so really, this is the number that actually shows up on your bill if you're running these all day. Anthropic prices Claude Opus 5 at $5 per million input tokens and 25 per million output. OpenAI prices GPT 5.6 Terra at $2.12 after a July 30th cut. On a real chat turn, BenchLM measured Opus 5 at a penny and 3/4 versus Terra's 0.8 of a cent, 54% cheaper. In a cache-heavy agent loop, that gap widens to 45 cents against 20 cents, 56% cheaper for agentic work. Kimi K3 has no comparable public pricing, so I'm not guessing at a number that doesn't exist. Run agents 50 times a day, and that gap becomes your actual budget, not a rounding error. GPT 5.6 Terra wins this round. That puts Claude Opus 5 at 0, GPT 5.6 Terra at 1, and Kimi K3 at 0. If you've used all three, drop a comment with which one's been the most consistent for your workflow, because real usage exposes things a benchmark table never will. My name is Brian, and I spend most of my week digging through AI products, benchmarks, APIs, and pricing pages to figure out where these tools actually differ. With the price gap on the table, the next question is obvious. Test 2, coding benchmark performance, because the cheaper model only matters if it can finish the job without constant retries. Claude Opus 5 scores 96% on SWE Bench verified, a figure OpenAI hasn't published a matching Terra number for. On SWE Bench Pro, Opus 5 leads 79.2% to 63.4%, nearly a 16-point gap on OpenAI's own table. One of the biggest problems I run into when using AI agents is turning their output into YouTube content I can actually use to market my product. That's why this video is sponsored by Subscriber, a tool that helps business owners connect their AI agents to YouTube and market their products without spending 10 hours every week creating content. You can connect Claude or ChatGPT directly to Subscriber. It then analyzes your business, website, and YouTube channel to help you create SEO-optimized video ideas, scripts, thumbnails, and even complete videos that actually match your brand. What I like most is that every week, Subscriber gives me a list of high-potential video ideas I can immediately execute, and it can even help edit videos for me, with or without my face, including videos like the one you're watching right now. It's easy to get started, and you can try Subscriber for free using the link in the description below. Now back to the video. On Terminal Bench 3.0, Opus 5 more than doubles Terra, 42.7% to 20.8%, the widest gap in this whole comparison. Terra does win one benchmark, Deep SWE, 69.6 to 68.8, close enough to call it a near tie. Kimi K3 still has no public score anywhere. That terminal bench gap means fewer stalled runs on long autonomous coding tasks. Price and quality are now split one apiece, which makes speed the test people actually feel every day. Now, Claude Opus 5 takes this round clearly, which ties the scoreboard at Claude Opus 5 1, GPT 5.6, Terra 1, Kimi K3 0. Test 3, output speed, because a slow model drags out every coding session and every agent loop you run. Artificial analysis puts GPT 5.6 Terra between 107 and 150 tokens per second, depending on effort level, against Claude Opus 5's 51 to 55. At medium effort, Terra's first token lands in about a second and a half versus Opus 5's 6.84 seconds, a 4.5 times gap you can feel while chatting. Push both to max reasoning effort though, and that pattern flips. Opus 5 becomes faster to first token, landing around 52 to 68 seconds against Terra's 160 to 164. So which one's actually faster depends on the effort level you're comparing, not just the model. For typical day-to-day use, GPT 5.6 Terra takes this round. That puts GPT 5.6 Terra at 2, Claude Opus 5 at 1, Kimi K3 at 0. Speed and price are stacking up as a real pattern for Terra. But none of it matters if a model can't hold your codebase in memory. Stick with me, because the last 4 tests are where this decision actually flips. Test 4, context and output limits, because running out of context means manually splitting files and hoping the model remembers what you fed it earlier. Claude Opus 5 ships a 1 million token context window, both default and maximum. GPT 5.6 Terra ships 1.05 million, slightly bigger. Both cap output at 128,000 tokens, an identical ceiling. Kimi K3 has no public spec here either. At this size, both can swallow a full repository without manual surgery, and a 5% context difference won't change that. The real separator left isn't a benchmark number, it's where you can actually run these things. There is a real caveat on context and output limits worth naming before we score it. This one's a tie, so the scoreboard holds at Claude Opus 5.1, GPT 5.6, Terra 2, Kimi K3 0. Final test, deployment and modality, because a cloud lock-in can decide this whole question before any benchmark enters the conversation. Claude Opus 5 covers a wide bedrock footprint across North America, South America, Europe, and Asia Pacific, plus Vertex, AI, and Azure. Modality is a flat tie. Both handle audio, image, speech, text, and video. If your team needs Vertex or a non-US bedrock region, Terra isn't an option, and no benchmark changes that. GPT 5.6 Terra is on Azure and Bedrock too, but on Bedrock it's limited to 3 US regions, Virginia, Ohio, and Oregon. Claude Opus 5 wins this round, making the final score Claude Opus 5 2, GPT 5.6 Terra 2, Kimi K3 0. Now, Claude Opus 5 won the coding benchmarks and deployment, and its weakness is cost and everyday chat speed. GPT 5.6 Terra won cost per task and output speed, but it's still carrying that double-digit benchmark gap plus a bedrock footprint stuck at 3 US regions. Kimi K3 walked away with 0 points across all 5 tests, not necessarily because it's bad, but because it hasn't put out a single source number to compete with yet. Claude Opus 5 won the coding benchmarks and deployment, and its weakness is cost and everyday chat speed. GPT 5.6 Terra won cost per task and output speed, but it's still carrying that double-digit benchmark gap, plus a bedrock footprint stuck at 3 US regions. Kimi K3 walked away with 0 points across all 5 tests, not necessarily because it's bad, but because it hasn't put out a single source number to compete with yet. Now, Claude Opus 5 won the coding benchmarks and deployment, and its weakness is cost and everyday chat speed. GPT 5.6 Terra won cost per task and output speed, but it's still carrying that double-digit benchmark gap, plus a bedrock footprint stuck at 3 US regions. Kimi K3 walked away with 0 points across all 5 tests, not necessarily because it's bad, but because it hasn't put out a single source number to compete with yet. If you're running high-volume everyday coding agents where price per task adds up, GPT 5.6 Terra is your lane. If you're doing the hardest reasoning-heavy coding work, where a wrong answer costs more than the extra tokens, Claude Opus 5 is your lane. For anyone just curious about the wildcard, Kimi K3 is worth watching, but it's not yet a default pick given how little data backs it up. So really, given 0 context, I'd start with GPT 5.6 Terra. It stays within a few points of Opus 5 on the benchmarks that matter for everyday work, while costing less than half as much and running more than twice as fast. One thing nobody talks about is that the entire speed test depends on a reasoning effort setting in neither company puts on the pricing page. Test 3 showed Terra winning to first token at a lower effort level, and Opus 5 winning at max effort, the same 2 models trading the lead based on nothing but a slider. That's worth remembering the next time you see any single benchmark number quoted for either model, since the effort level behind it usually isn't mentioned alongside the score. So basically, if you're testing these yourself, checking more than one effort setting is the only way to know which model actually wins for your specific use case. If you're trying to work out which of these fits your workflow, the next thing worth understanding is that GPT 5.6 isn't one model. It's 3 tiers, Sol, Terra, and Luna, under the same name. That's exactly what I'm breaking down next, GPT 5.6 Sol versus Terra versus Luna, and which tier you're actually paying for.